All right. Well, let's get to the major game of the week. So this actually just released right after I think on the day we recorded last week. It released last Friday.
Uh-huh.
And that's Returnal for PS5.
Karen Simulator 2021.
Yeah, or Karen Simulator 2021. So the main character, Celine, she's an astronaut. Like the company is Astra.
Uh-huh.
And she's flying a plane called the Helios, or Helios is her base. I'm not exactly sure. She's always talking to Helios. And she's investigating this weird signal called White Shadow on the planet Atropos. And she crash lands on the planet. And it's immediately kind of weird and dark and jungle-like. And you get attacked by these tentacle monsters. And the first thing you find is a weapon that's on another Astra, like, corpse. And you're like, how the hell did another Astra person get here? And then you look at the helmet and it's your name. And you're like, oh shit, that's me. That is my name. This is my gun. What is happening? And then you die and you immediately warp back to crashing the ship again. And you realize you're on this weird loop and you start to find these audio logs and it's you talking about how you've been here for a really long time and have been fighting. And you're like, what the hell? I just got here. How is this possible? And you run into your childhood home in the first biome, and eventually you get a key to go inside, and it goes all first person and PT and creepy. So there's like a real there's a real theme of existential horror in this game, where you're trying to figure out the mystery of why you keep dying and then like returning to the beginning, and why you're finding evidence that you've been here before, but you have no memory of it other than like the times that you've already went through and died and whatnot. And it's pretty intense. It's by the same. It's House Mark. What's the name of it? Is that?
Yep,
do you remember?
That's it.
So it's the same developer that did Resogun,
Mm-hmm.
and it's definitely got that kind of bullet hell aesthetic. A lot of the enemies will shoot orbs of energy at you in varying degrees and forms, and in reaction to various things. And the moment-to-moment gameplay is very risk-reward, but they do reward you for being more defensive, because the more enemies you down without taking a hit, you gain adrenaline, which gives you various buffs. Like it'll increase the power of your melee, increase the ability to detect enemies behind objects, increase the size of your reload bar, because there's this thing called overload, where when your gun runs out of ammo and you're reloading automatically, if you press the trigger in the middle of that bar, it'll give you an overload buff, and of course you'll reload faster. So there's all these little things, and you'll find stuff to help you, but a lot of the stuff usually comes with some kind of debuff along with a buff. For example, there are chests and things in the game that could be corrupted with, I think they call it malice, or no, there's like malignant. Thank you. Like, yeah. So any malignant chests or keys that you pick up, you have a chance to have a suit malfunction, and that could be taking damage every time you pick up an item, which is one of the worst ones. Taking damage when you fall a certain height, could be having a higher chance of other objects being malignant, different stuff like that. And then you have these parasites that will buff you, like adding protection and firepower, things like that, but again, giving you some kind of debuff. So you have to weigh whether or not the debuff is worth it or if it fits your playstyle. And I find that my success in this game really hinged upon me quickly adapting to my particular playstyle and what works for me, which I found out luckily pretty quickly, to be honest. And I don't know if that's just me having a lot of luck, but I've done 2 episodes, Tuesday and Thursday, about 3 hours each, and I've already reached the end of the final biome and had my first quote-unquote ending. But of course, a la Hades, I've looped back around, and now I'm trying to figure out why I've done that again. I think that there's mention of alternate endings and, of course, continuing story. I think that my forays or adventures into the house and my repeated runs through the biome will eventually uncover more of the story for me. But it was funny on Thursday thinking I've gotten off this planet. Like, I did it. I won. Yay. And then only to realize, nope, there's more. So it's been a bit of a blast. I've had a lot of fun with it. People are talking about how difficult it is, and I don't want to cheapen that and say it's not, but it's not the type of difficult that to me feels insurmountable. To me, the difficulty really does depend on your playstyle and the decisions that you make, and a bit of luck as far as what you find in the run. I had probably the most amazing run I've had yet yesterday, and I got all the way through the game in one shot, because, I mean, that's how you do it. You got to do it in one shot.
Right.
And
So weird.
I maxed out, like, my weapon proficiency and my HP. I had all these buffs, and I was just good to go. And I figured out a good flow and a good, like, I had a good decision-making process. Like, I'm not picking up this parasite. I'm going to cleanse this chest. I'm going to skip this chest. You know, stuff like that, right?
Right.
Or I favor this weapon because I'm better with it. You know, you start to figure out which weapons you do better with, and then you figure out the enemy's patterns. So there is a lot of trial and error, but it's so fun figuring things out, at least it was for me, that I didn't mind dying or failing. And a lot of times when I did, I felt like I deserved it. And I'm like, well, I just kind of screwed that up. I got to try again. And so for me, there was this constant pool of, what are you going to find on this run? What are you going to discover? What parts of the story are you going to find out? Do you get to go to that freaky house again and get spooked in first person? You know, there's all this weird shit going on. And the combat is just wonderful. I even remapped the controller to make the combat easier for me personally. I switched the dash and the jump, which are two very crucial buttons in this game, especially in the first biome. There's a lot of pitfalls. So if you zig when you wanted to zag, you suffer for it badly. So I switched the buttons for Thursday, and in the beginning you'll see me like he should have jumped there. I did try. I pressed the wrong button. But once it clicked and I got my mind used to switch the buttons that I switched, I was able to figure it out. And the reason why I switched buttons is your dash and your jump are on the face buttons, so you can't control the camera while you're jumping or dashing, but you jump and dash so much because the combat's all about just keep moving. Don't get hit, keep moving, take your shots when you think you can safely take them. And so I figured if I put my dash and my jump on the bumpers, I would have a better time with the combat. And it's true. That actually ended up being really super useful to me. Okay. So there's been a bit of controversy this week with the difficulty. People are like, oh, get good. And why are people complaining that it's hard? And I've seen a lot of articles talking about there's no save state in a run. And that's where a lot of the backlash was coming from. Like, it's supposed to be hard. No. The issue of there not being a save state is not about whether it's hard or not. It's about the game respecting your time. And I talked to you about this throughout the week.
Yeah.
They say that if you're in a good run and you need to stop playing because, I don't know, you need to sleep, eat, or live your life, you can just pause the game and put it in rest mode. And that works, except for there's a few problems with that. One, and this happens in my neighborhood fairly often. It happened, I think, actually this week. The power just goes out. Even if it flickers on and off, like during a storm. Bam. Run dead. Okay? Let's say the power doesn't go out. Another thing that happened to me, the game updated while it was in rest mode overnight, and then it decided to shut itself off so that way the update could take hold rather than asking me. Because I would just prefer to play the game offline, which you can. You can most definitely play the game offline. This is not an Outrider situation. But because I was online when I put it in rest mode, it decided, well, he must want to remain online, so we'll just kick him out of the game altogether.
Exactly.
That makes sense. And then I got kicked out of rest mode again for, I think, well, actually, no, this didn't happen to me. This happened to Video Game Donkey. This is on Twitter. This is another thing that people discovered. If the game crashes. Now, so far, the game has not crashed on me, and they did release another update this week that I think fixes or addresses the issue of crashing. And from my personal experience, I've never had the game crash on me once. So maybe it did get fixed, or maybe it just depends. I don't know. And I've had some pretty lengthy gaming sessions. Like, I probably played the game upwards maybe 4 hours at a time, depending.
Wow.
And no issues. So OBS crashed on me last night. If you go to watch part 2 on my YouTube channel or on Twitch right now, there's this little part about 60 seconds long, almost up to 3 hours, where it has that symbol of that guy grabbing his head like, oh no.
Yeah.
But I immediately saw as my screen flickered, it actually got me hit. Unfortunately, I was in the middle of a firefight when it happened. But I was able to have the presence of mind to quickly pause, run over here, turn OBS back on, and keep the stream going. So that was cool.
Right. Wow.
But
Seems like a lot of issues popping up.
Yeah, so the reason why people want to save state is because, and I didn't notice this because I have Hades on Switch. So when I was in the middle of a run on Hades, I would just turn off my Switch because it automatically goes into sleep mode. You know, you'd have to like physically try to power it off.
Right.
A power search doesn't hurt. The only thing that might do it, and this happened to me on Persona 5 Strikers one time, is if the cart gets tilted and then it doesn't register the game. Has that ever happened to you where the cart
No.
tilted?
How would it tilt?
I don't know how it happened, but I turned it on and it just said it shut off because it could no longer detect a cart or something. So I had to like pull it out and put it back in, the little cartridge. And it was just in the dock. Like, I don't think I bumped it or anything, unless somebody came in here, dropped my Switch, didn't tell me, and put it back up. Which, I mean, I live in the house with a 5-year-old and someone who doesn't play games at all. It's totally possible. Like, whoops, I dropped this. Doesn't look broke. Just put it back and don't tell him.
All right. Right. No one will ever know.
Yeah, so my thing is, what I think that you should be able to do is I think you should be able to save and exit. And that way, as soon as you boot back in the game, it just launches you right back into that run. If you die or try to start a new run, that's when you would lose your run progress. And that way people can still... Because the runs can last a really long time, man. Like I said, to get through all 3 biomes, I did it in about 2 hours, but it could take longer or less time just depending on how familiar you are with the game. And I had to be careful in a lot of parts, because the game is tough.
Biomes?
Yeah, there's 3 biomes. I mean, unless it extends through multiple plays, but my first playthrough of the planet to escape the planet, 3 biomes.
Okay.
And a lot of the reviews I've seen only show you up to 2, so I'm thinking that the reason why is because the 3rd biome is spoilery in some way. I don't know.
Okay.
But I do know that I couldn't get all of the traversal tools until I got to the 3rd biome. But there's still one traversal tool I don't have unless I haven't figured something out that I should have. There are parts in the game where you have power-ups and items that you can only get underwater. And I haven't been able to get them because I can't go underwater. But I have a grappling hook so I can reach high areas. I have a melee weapon so I can like uncover like certain vines and certain force field blocks. And there's really nothing else impeding my traversal progress so far. So
yeah, I will say this: the gameplay looks smooth. Really
it feels
smooth.
smooth
Looks like
too.
a lot of fun.
Like, I gotta tell you, the way that they utilize that controller for feedback, like, I get a lot of cues about my alternate fire modes and using the alternate fire, and cues about my environment and the enemies. All of the sound effects, the on-screen prompts, the controller, they work in tandem to make you badass. Like, Karen, if she asks for the manager, fucking run out of there, because that store is going to be a smoking crater. Like, she kicks so much ass. Oh my god. So I feel really in control and powerful when I'm playing as her. And last night when I was fighting the boss of the 2nd biome, and I beat him on my first try too, by the way. I felt very proud about that. I beat the 3rd boss on my first try with the worst weapon. I don't want to ruin it too much, but you're a distance away from the 3rd boss for a decent amount of that battle, and I had a shotgun. I was like, fuck my life.
Oh, wow.
I know. And I had a chance to grab a handgun right before, but I was like, why do I want this handgun? This shotgun is doing really... Oh, shit.
That's why.
And it drew the battle out longer than it needed to, and I almost died, but I made it, man. At one point I was like, I'm not going to win, but I'm also not going to give up. You know what I mean?
Right.
So... I don't know. Do you have any questions about the game? Anything you want to clarify? Anything you're curious about? I played Returnal a bunch. AMA.
Yeah. As far as your the story goes, do you feel like you've gotten, like you understand what's going on, or are you going to need to play a lot more?
I have theories. It's a lot like WandaVision. Okay. You get clues and tidbits, and you're like, I can tell that there's some drama between her and her mother, who also wanted to be an astronaut but may or may not have been as successful as she became. And the home that you see is a representation of your childhood home, so there's a lot of psychological stuff that happens there. Letters you read, books you pick up, and there's rooms that she's afraid to go into. So I feel like something really traumatic happened to her, and she's either really on that planet and the planet is able to pull or manifest her greatest fears or things that have caused her trauma, or she's in a hospital somewhere and dreaming this whole thing. I don't know.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But there definitely is, there's a lot of existentialism and a lot of psychological horror that is laced over this in this action game. It's really weird. I've never played anything quite like it, but I'm loving the direction that these roguelikes are going, because they're taking the formula of roguelite and baking it into a really complex story. Between this and Hades, it's becoming one of my favorite genres. Like if people keep making games like this, where they weave such an interesting story and awesome gameplay into these roguelikes, I already liked them. You know what I mean? I love Rogue Legacy. I love Binding of Isaac. But this is just taking these games to a whole new level, and I'm here for it. I love this game. It'll probably end up being in my top 5 this year if we do another top 5 for 2021. Okay. But it's early, and there's a lot of other games.